How are the stories you're telling yourself impacting the way you experience success in your business, your career, and your life at large? Well, that's why we have Carrie here today. She's going to tell us a little bit about herself, why this topic matters to her, and why it should matter to you. Carrie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Tell the people a little bit about yourself so they understand exactly where you're coming from when it comes to this narrative around stories.
Well, I always saw myself as a consummate storyteller. And I think that's because from a very, very, very early age, stories helped me survive. I had a very rough beginning in life. And so the way I could fall asleep at night was telling myself these stories. Even as a baby, as a 2-year old, I would say, my real mom and dad are looking for me and they're going to take me out of this horrible situation. So that grew into this passion for storytelling. And when I was in film school, I saw how stories are structured. We have themes, we have characters. And it just all occurred to me. It's like a light bulb went off. And I said, oh my God, my life is a story. My mom has been the antagonist. I've had the heroes, I've had the villains, I've had the thing, but the biggest thing was I had this theme of life sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And so I lived that theme. And I started working on changing it. Just like you can you can have creative differences in a movie or on a TV show, and you change characters, you change directors, you change writers. I thought, I'm going to change the writer. I'm going to become a better writer of my life story. So I did. And now I help people change theirs and live happier, more fulfilling lives.
That makes all the difference. I feel like that's one of those things where when you were describing that whole idea about the movie, and when you change directors or writers or even filmographers, those little tweaks and changes, they make a huge difference. People who
Yes.
have been around here for a while know that I love Harry Potter. And when you think of that, I just think this is, I can't help but think of this. You watch the first movie, awesome. It's little kids doing magic and they do their thing, whatever. Watch the second movie and you're like, oh, okay, I see this. It's a little darker, but it's still fluffy. You go to the third movie and you're like, whoa, hold on, what happened? And there were so many little changes that happened to the story and to the writers and the directors. And that shifted the way people received the story, but also the way, the story was simply told and lived out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to argue that those changes were really more true to the book, which leads me to this idea of you are the book, right? You get to write the story that is the most true to you in order to achieve those goals and dreams, aspirations, etc.
Yes. Yes. You take back your power. You realize that you have the pen. You decide. And I spent years blaming my parents and blaming the world for putting me in this situation. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Wait a minute. My parents died very young. How long do I want to keep being unhappy? And go ahead.
Well, I'm here for, I'm just keep going, because honestly, I'm thinking power, and I feel like what you're saying and what you're about to say is going to really tap into that. I'm excited.
Yeah, I thought every time I would hear people say, well, you can be happy today, I was like, yeah, rah, 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 rah. And I wanted to complain and holler on about that. But then I realized, well, hold on a second. We do it in movies all the time. We decide that a character can be miserable. In fact, that's the hero's journey, isn't it? You said, like, you used Harry Potter. Everything that happened to him made him stronger for that ultimate fight in book 6. How many books were there? The ultimate.
Seven books, 8 movies. It depends on which.
Yeah.
Depends on whether somebody's a book reader or a movie watcher for stories.
Without the challenges he went through in those first books, he would have never been able to fight Voldemort. Everything led to that moment. And I realized that that's what my life was. Everything led to this moment where I could be the person I am now, which is so very different than the way it started. So very different. But it's mine. It is my life. It's not the one I was born into. It's mine. I made this.
And I think there's, like, we talk about power, and just in stating that, I'm reminded of, musicians such as Billy Joel. He's
Yep.
got a song called My Life. And it's
Yep.
literally that. It's just like, this is my life. Like, you don't get to tell me. I get to make my own mistakes. I get to make choices based on, and informed choices based on those mistakes
Yes.
and those successes.
Yes.
And allowing yourself to do that, allowing yourself to tap into that freedom is something that's going to open all of the doors. And I find that people, what may or may not have held you back, but what I've seen many of my clients get held back on is fear,
Yes.
which incidentally
Yes.
also comes from stories, narratives that
Yes.
we've been told and
Yes.
that we reiterate and tell ourselves.
Yes. Yes. If you think about it, when you're born, you are a complete blank slate. Kids do not know to dislike people that are different from them. They don't know that they should only stay with certain people or do certain things. They're taught that. They're given that story. And it helps us build a sense of belonging. When your parents and in your family, we have a natural urge to belong.
Mm-hmm.
And when you meet these big giant people who are your family, we want to feel belonging with them. That's our first sense of belonging. That's where we get safety. That's where, you know, we learn that if you step outside the family, it's scary. If you step outside, when you meet people that speak a different language, they're not like us. Ergo, they could be scary.
Mm-hmm.
So we're taught to fear. I look at my little puppy who has known nothing but love and generosity from day one, because I have friends who rescue dogs, and you can tell when they've been terrorized and how they hold back. And my little dog, who has from day one only known plenty and abundance and love and joy, he isn't afraid of anything. He walks up to dogs 10 times bigger than him and is like, "Hi, how are you?" And it's like, I don't want to teach him to be afraid, but I don't want him to get his head bit off either. So I know it's a balance. Parents, you want to teach your kids to be concerned or pay attention, but we go too far in the other direction. And so we have these fear stories that go on. And it's time to break that. It's really time to break that.
And I think this is an important realization too for individuals who are realizing that the narratives they've been taught are not all correct. It's
Mm.
just to come to terms with the fact that they're there for a reason. They were there for a reason.
Yeah.
And that reason very well may have been a good one. Maybe it wasn't. Um, but understanding whether it was or wasn't, and understanding whether or not it's still doing its job, the good reason, maybe keeping you safe or
Mhm.
whatever,
Mhm.
are pivotal reflections and then decisions to make. You reflect on it. Is this serving me anymore? Was this ever true? Is
Yeah.
it still true?
Yeah.
And then making the decision on what is the new narrative I want to tell myself in order to create success in this space.
That's right. You're absolutely right. And I think about it as, my parents were first generation Americans, and dad was from Italy, my mother was from Serbia. And their notion of their kids were their daughters got married and had babies, and their sons ran the household and whatever. So from pretty much immediately, I was taught how to make the beds and clean the house and make dinner. My brother never had to do any of that.
Mm.
And anytime I went on a date, my parents were like, "When are you getting married?" And it's like, "I'm
Right.
going to college." And they're like, "What are you going to college for? You can meet a husband here." And it's like, we were given these role definitions. That's probably the first story that we're given when we're born. Young ladies do this. Young boys always get into trouble and break their arms and they roughhouse. Young ladies must be a certain way. Now I know it's not that way so much now, but there's still hints of
It's
this gender identification that goes on.
absolutely. And that's the challenge with a lot of the stories that we need to come to terms with, is many of them are systemic, and simultaneously many of them are subconscious.
Yes.
They're underneath many layers, and
Yes.
that's influencing the way you're and that is, I shouldn't say can be, that is influencing the way you're showing up, not only in life, in your day-to-day interactions, and your expectations of yourself as just a human being, but also as in all of those capacities as a business owner, as
Yep.
a career
Oh,
driven person. How am I going to show up? I get this all the time. Oh, I'm not a writer. I can't do writing. Or, oh, I can't show up on camera. I can't do that. All these I can't. And well, why? And then there's always, like you say, this role dialogue,
yeah.
or some sort of systemic belief about themselves, and
Yep.
their value and their worth. Much of that is ingrained in sexism.
Yep.
For a lot of my clients who are typically women, a lot of
Yep.
it is ingrained in sexism and sense of self. But the other, that worthiness is also, it has to do with, I'm going to argue, all of the other isms. Right,
Yes.
all the other isms. I can't be too loud. I can't be too quiet, depending on where I'm from and what social class I'm from. And oh, I'm I've gotten this. I'm just a insert role here. Um, People like me can only make this much money,
Yes.
or something to that effect. And that those are stories,
Yes.
and they're systemic, and they're ingrained, and they're challenging. But changing that dialogue can literally change every element of your life.
Yes. And this is the other aspect of stories. If we don't tell our stories of how we overcame some of these situations, nobody believes that they can.
Mm.
So we need to be role models out there telling these stories of how we defined ourselves. And that's why I will every day try to put that story out there, because I call them generational stories. You're right, they're systemic. But these stories were given to me by my mom, and they were given to her by her mom. They
Carrie,
were given.
we're breaking up, so let's let the internet catch up with us for a moment. Okay, perfect. We broke up just for a minute there. Luckily, I've got great people behind me who can help me out here. Start out with generational stories that were told to you by your mom, and then restate what you just said.
Okay. Um, these generational stories, they were given to me by my mom. She got the same ones from her mom, that got the stories from her mom, all the way back. Some say 7 generations. That's how far back you have to go. But my point is, if we don't tell our stories today of who we are, you, me, other people, not just women, but people. Because I was on a podcast with a male host, and he said, I'm kind of tired of being told I have to make the money and I can't cry. And I have a cat. He said, I have a cat and I get bullied by people who say, what are you doing with a cat?
Mm-mm, mm-mm. See, I love that you said that, because it's just so important for people to understand that, like we were just talking about sexism, and we were talking about females raising your voices. When you talk about the males saying exactly what you just said, I'm tired of being told this. They're how do I articulate this well and respectfully? Feminism seeks to dissolve both of those negative narratives.
Yes.
Many people don't realize that that's what feminism is about. Feminism isn't this, people like to say, oh, it's bra burning, da da da. No, it's not. It's letting men be who they want to be also. without criticism, without irrational expectations around how they express emotions, how they provide for their families, what type of pet they have. That's ridiculous. And feminism seeks to disintegrate that.
Yeah.
And it does that by restructuring narratives
Yes.
and allowing the individual to rewrite their own story
Yes.
without the burden of those imposed narratives.
It's interesting you brought that up. When I was 16 years old and applying for those colleges that my parents were flabbergasted that I wanted to go to,
Yeah.
I was pretty smart. I had good grades. I did great on my SATs. So I was getting calls now. This is at the time when feminism was in full swing and, we were doing the Equal Rights Amendment, which, by the way, still is not signed and still is not eradicated, whatever that word is.
I hear you.
But this woman called me and said, you're one of these women who could go to school and be an engineer and be this. And I was like, why? I don't want to do that. Well, it's time we started taking on the jobs that men held. And I said, aren't you supposed to call me to say, what do I want to do? Help me find my path? Now you don't swing the pendulum. I'm 16 years old and I'm having this argument with this woman saying, it isn't about becoming a man, is it? Is that what this is about?
Love. I love that so much.
And so to me, it just kept speaking to this fact that I was so interested in changing the story.
Mm-hmm. Right. And when you did that, and this is something that I think you were hitting on earlier, is just this idea that as you're changing your story and after you've changed your story, that whole process, there's not a step along that way that couldn't positively influence another person to change their own. And that's how you can create a shift in those systemic stories. Because one person changing their dialogue, their narrative, that's not going to make the world of difference, especially if they only keep it to themselves.
Right.
It's when you feel empowered to show up and tell people about that journey, that's when you start flicking that switch. And this is where, from a marketing point of view, where I can't stress enough how important it is to be visible, to be open and transparent and consistent in how you are relaying the journey that you're on.
Mm-hmm.
And how you are helping the people around you. Now, you don't need to phrase it as such that, oh, I'm doing this transformation, I'm rewriting my story. You can, absolutely. But it's more so just about stepping into the courage that it requires to share the journey you've been on and the journey you currently on and what your intention is moving forward, to empower others to do the same thing. So if you're playing small, if you're hiding from the world in some way and putting a cap on your story, you're doing nobody a favor, including yourself.
That's right. I was leading a meeting one time and it had nothing to do with stories. It was a workshop and I was the lead because I'm a great facilitator and I love it. And I had nothing to do with stories. And this woman came up to me afterward and said, I've never had a role model like you. I didn't know a woman could be who you are. She said, it's blowing me away. And so when you say show up, just show up. You don't have to talk about, I did this great story. Now, I am talking about story because I'm being specific, but that's my new role. But when you just show up and be your genuine, authentic self without the other stories to color how you try to be in the world, and you don't even have to get up and lead a workshop or facilitate a meeting. Your presence is enough. Your presence is enough to show people what it's like to be a real live human being leading a real live life. Yes.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And I mean, I host my own little masterclass that's called Behind the Scenes of Just Show Up. So when I hear somebody say just show up, I have to disclaim, Yes, we know there's more to just showing up than meets the eye. You have to do a
Mhm.
lot of inner work first, and you have to confront fears and find arenas. And I say arenas lightly, like we're not Taylor Swift, okay? We're not selling out arenas, but I mean arenas as in platforms for you. What makes you feel comfortable? What should be a part of your story? Is it a podcast? Maybe. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is it
Yeah.
not? Is it a blog? Is it just social media? Is it, maybe it's not even that. Maybe it's you're going to your local community center and you're volunteering, and you literally physiologically show up there and
Yeah.
do as you're told. That's okay too.
Yes.
And it's all about the energy you bring forth there, and how you conduct yourself as a human being based on those stories that you may be rewriting for yourself.
Yep. I have to double, second, and triple everything you just said, because this process is can be a little bit daunting. It's not always easy to say why, but we have to ask.
Right. Right. Now, on that note, um, I do need to, this is the thing. I feel like we've come to a point in our conversation where we could literally crack open an egg of, maybe egg and a cornucopia. I like that one better. We could literally
Did I
open
lose
a
you again?
cornucopia of underlying topics that will allow us to help others to express their fullest self, to rewrite their stories, and to understand their place in the world in order
Yeah.
for the express purpose of achieving their goals, their dreams, their aspirations, whatever that looks like. But we only have so much time in a day. So,
Yeah.
so what I need to do is I need to ask you, understanding that we've just talked about a lot of things, is there one thing that's burning inside of you that you feel like the people who've joined us for this conversation today need to hear before we leave? If there's that one thing in you, I'd like to ask you to share it. Now, before I do ask you to share it, I need everybody here to know these conversations happen every single week. We dive deep into the things that really matter when it comes to how you just show up, how you market yourself on different levels. So make sure that you hit that bell, subscribe, so that you can see what's coming next, so that you get the notification that says, hey, the next conversation is about this. And comment. Do you have a question? Guess what? Carrie and I, we can answer. And we're excited to. Let's keep this conversation going.
Yep.
Now, with that, I'll get off the soapbox. Carrie, please let the people know what they need to hear today.
I think everyone needs to know that they have permission to be the person they can be. You don't need somebody else to tell you. If you do, take it from me. I give you permission to be the best you can be.
And breathe that in.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's powerful. We know you don't need permission. We know you don't need it. But if you feel like you kind of do, you've already got it.
You got it. You got it. Shauna and I give you permission.
Mhm.
And if you need anything or whatever, just know that I believe in everybody who hears this, because we can do amazing things, and I believe in you.
Absolutely. Now, having a cheerleader like you is a really powerful tool. I'd say tool very, very lightly, because it's more than that, right? This is a resource that is next level immersive. Let everybody know where they can get in touch with you so that they can dive into your world of stories.
You can all go to my website, and I see Shauna has the QR code here, carriecasey.west.com. I have programs that I put on all the time about taking back your power. I even work with you if you want to write your story. We can write it together. So I have a lot of different ways and a lot of resources on the site that you'll find helpful.
Oh, that's amazing. So don't forget to go to this place right here on the screen. It's also in the show notes. So if you're hanging out on a place where you're not really watching, it's definitely in the show notes. Hop over there and find out these different ways that you can actually embrace your true story. And I
Mhm.
think it's really interesting to think about how you can literally Work with someone as knowledgeable as you, Carrie, to literally pen and paper write your story and experience the transformation that creates within yourself, but also simultaneously does that whole showing up thing and making and influencing all sorts of people so that they can then recreate their own stories, show up in their own ways. The results of that, the benefits of that are exponential.
Yeah,
I love.
truly, truly.
Oh my goodness. Well, Carrie, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I hope that you all join in the conversation because this is one that can get really deep and layered. Ask your questions, participate, subscribe, and make sure that when you look at all the things, I can't say this with enough um, passion and devotion here. Make sure that when you're interacting with things in your life, you understand that there's a story woven in all of it. And not all stories were written with your best intentions in mind. So think critically and decide what's for you. Then take action towards your dreams because, as Carrie said, we both believe in you. With that, I hope you have a great rest of your day. We will chat soon.